Hi everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the Behold podcast on the Genre Equality channel. I'm Hitzer,
Isa.
and this week we're going to be talking about the hidden cinematic gems of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
If you recall, a couple of weeks ago we did an episode featuring the best films of 2021 so far. So those are the big award bait, lah, shall we say? Not to say they're not good. We loved all those films. We love Judas and the Black Messiah. We love Minari,
Mm-hmm.
etc., etc. But I figured that we should take some time to kind of highlight the small little art house indie films that maybe don't necessarily get the attention of the award bait kind of films, of the
Yeah.
Oscar films. So here we are here to talk about four very little known, and you probably have not seen movies. But that's all the more reason we should talk about them, because I really, really, really want people to catch films such as this, just because they don't get the sort of awards recognition or critical recognition or global acclaim of a Parasite, for example,
yeah.
doesn't mean that there isn't a wealth of great cinema out there at reach. Sadly, a lot of these art house films are not very well distributed. But thankfully, thanks to the age of VOD and streaming, most of this are available on VODs, with the exception of one film, which is The Climb, which is available on the Projector Plus and was released by the projector in Singapore, thanks to our friends at Enter Speed Pictures.
Mm-hmm.
So here we're gonna talk about four different films that I want to highlight. Number one is a British coming of age film called Rocks. A very unevocative title, but
Mm.
I think, in my opinion, one of the best films of 2021 so far.
Yep.
Even considering all the films that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Secondly, I want to talk about Shiva Baby, which is a humorous mix of horror and anxiety and stress that we're going to be talking about as well. The third film is a mind-blowing journalism documentary coming out of Romania called Collective. One of the finest journalism films I've ever seen. Really, really reminded me what inspired me to study that in school.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, one of the artsiest bromance films I've ever seen called The Climb. So all four of his films, my co-host Isa has not been able to watch, but because of my day job as a film critic and TV critic, I've been able to go around and watch different film festivals, your
Yeah.
Venices and your Cannes and your Toronto's and your South by Southwest and whatnot. So I've been able to pick just some of my favorite gems. I'll be the first to admit that all these films have issues, so which is why they're not in the best of lah. But
Mm.
I love it just because of their creativity, and just the fact I don't see many of these kinds of stories being told.
Yeah, that's true.
Um, and what's your favorite of the four before we delve into them in detail?
I think it's a toss up between Rocks and Shiva Baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think between those two. I mean, like, the collective is really really good.
Mm-hmm.
It's harrowing, it's evocative. And we'll dive more into that. When we get to that segment.
Yeah.
Um, the climb has its moments.
Mm-hmm.
It's entirely enjoyable, but still, there's something definitely that stands out more for the first two films that we're going to talk about.
Oh, 100%. Let's begin with Rocks, which is a gritty yet giddy coming of age story that follows a Nigerian British teen named Shola Amotoso. One day, she's living a normal life, hanging out with friends in secondary school, and the next, she's forced to become the sole breadwinner and caretaker of a younger brother
Mm-hmm.
after her mother abandons them. Rocks is a faultlessly authentic and exuberantly naturalistic film, much thanks to the improvised dialogue and sheer energy from its amazing cast of non-professional actors.
Mm.
Rocks is kind of a radiant celebration of youth and friendship, as well as a painful drama about what happens when deprivation forces kids to grow up before they're ready. I've seen Rocks a couple of times. I've loved Rocks. What is your opinion upon watching one of my favorite films of 2021?
Oh man, it is so natural the way in
Yeah.
which everything is kind of captured, the way the
Hmm.
characters interact with each other.
Hmm.
You'll be forgiven for thinking that these were like professional actors, right? Like
Yeah.
every single character is so well portrayed and fleshed out.
Hmm.
And it feels very true to form. And I think that's kind of like the first thing that caught me. Rocks also has a very Florida Project vibe to it. I think that
The
was the immediate,
naturalism.
yeah, the naturalism of it, and thematically also kind of like
Hmm.
looking at similar themes. Um, and of course, we've already talked about the Florida project and how much we love that.
Yeah.
And of course, it has gone on about his love for naturalistic films. Rock falls
Yes.
like squarely into that, and it gives
Hmm.
you all of that and quite a bit more.
Hmm.
For sure. Like I definitely enjoyed it. I feel like its ability to show a very multicultural and very multicultural specific
Hmm.
kind of community within the schools itself and characters itself makes it very colorful.
Hmm.
More so than maybe like Florida Project, for example, right? And like that just makes it fascinating, it's a peek into the lives of, well, these teens, I guess. Yeah, in
Hmm.
high school, right? Yeah, so these teens and these kids that just have a um it's a fascinating insight to lives that obviously I don't have, I'm not privy to.
Yes, yes, 100%, But at the same time, you are able to relate so authentically and so genuinely to their lives because I think we've all been kids in secondary school, right? We've all
Yeah.
been at that age. We all know like how we talk to friends, the sheer exuberance of hanging out, but at the same time, we've never had struggle in the way that the main character here struggles.
Hmm.
This is kind of a social realist adventure written by Teresa Ikoko and Claire Wilson and directed by Severo Gavron, who do a good job of capturing the multi-ethnic community in East London.
Oh yeah.
Very much in the spirit of what those old school French new wave kind of films, and as you mentioned already, the Florida Project, which also gains inspiration from there. As I mentioned, the story at the center is a group of 11 year 11 girls, and the star is Buki Bakre, who plays the Nigerian British girl I mentioned earlier. She's nicknamed Rocks. So let's call her Rocks.
Yeah.
She's like no great academic high flyer, but really talented at cosmetics. That's her passion.
Hmm.
Her dad has passed away. She lives with a troubled mom who has had, as a social worker delicately puts it, issues managing her medication. So it's implied that her mother has mental health issues.
Yeah.
So even with her mother around, it is Rox who is largely responsible for minding her kid brother Emmanuel, who is also brilliantly played by the Angelo Ose Kisedu,
Hmm.
a great kid actor. And he's a kind of a bit of a scene stealer as well as all the girls in the film. He starts the film like the whole odyssey of Rox and Emmanuel, right? They essentially, after the mom leaves, they kind of have to go on the run.
Yeah.
That is the catalyst for the drama of the film. They have to go on the run, not because they're fugitives, not because they're criminals, but because Rox wants to be with her brother, and she's afraid that if social services catches up with them and realizes that the mother has abandoned them, they will have to be pulled apart and have to live in foster homes, etc., etc. So that kind of provides the motor that drives the film along. But in a way, the best moments come when Rox is just hanging out with her little brother, or Rox
Yeah.
are hanging out with her friends, and are doing nothing more dramatically significant than just stalking and laughing and rapping and like taking videos of themselves and selfies. Like occasionally the scenes erupt into something um defiant and so vibrant, like like a food fight monumentally kicks off in the middle of a home econs class, right?
Yeah.
when when a girl tells a grumpy teacher, you're like this because you've got your period, sir. He furiously replies that's actually really offensive, but it's this kind of really improv type dialogue that doesn't need to go anywhere or do anything or convey information even,
Hmm.
that makes it highly entertaining and watchable, but more than that, makes it highly authentic. Because I feel like, as you mentioned, you could be forgiven for thinking that these kids are actors, but
Yeah.
you could also be forgiven in some scenes for thinking that a director just approached a group of random kids and just like started
Oh yeah.
filming them. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. The sadness of the film is also there. The sadness sometimes is piercing. But at the same time, the core of it is Rock's resilience, her tenacity, and in fact, sometimes a delusional belief that she can take care of her brother as well. So it's a good mix of where she's coming from. And the social service workers are not villains per se, but they
Yeah.
are like to be avoided lah. But I'm not gonna spoil how it ends, but you kind of know that a story like this can't end well, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty clear as you're following along. Like, there's a trajectory that is clear, kind of like from the onset, and through no fault of the film or the story at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not, feasible, right, for them to continue on their own, without any sort of support. And as
Mm-hmm.
much as there are moments in time where you root for them to be able to do that, just
Mm-hmm.
because of the magic of their relationship, and you want to see that continue.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, there are realities that they have to come to terms with.
Yeah, like
Um,
the Florida Project, right? In
yeah,
the end.
exactly.
Yeah.
So all around, like a solid stuff. I really do think that Rox and her brother, those moments are truly special, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have to hold any sort of like symbolic significance in order for it to be powerful. In
Mm.
showing, just kids being kids, right?
Mm.
In difficult situations, and there are special moments where they can continue to be kids, despite the fact that there are real things that they have to deal with, that are knocking kind of like, just on of them being on the threshold of.
Yeah,
um
yeah.
yeah,
You know,
solid stuff.
so like it's so natural, so sparkling, and behind the camera I can sense like this filmmaker is going to do big things,
Mm.
in the route of Sean Baker, who did Florida Project and Tangerine and all of that, and Chloe Zhao, and that type of filmmaker,
Yep.
she really knows when to direct and when to let her young stars just be themselves. And I often, I had the subtitles on. I often like I just stopped trying to catch lines of dialogue and just kind
Yeah.
of tune in to the frequency of them, like just be in their vibe.
Hmm.
Rocks reverberates with that kind of noisy authenticity. There is like, random tamponet voice in the toilets, and dance moves are busted out, and Instagram and Snapchat are ever present to capture the moment lah. So the result is, I said, like, it's gritty, it's sad, but it's also giddying. It's a giddy human drama
Yeah.
that plays like a mix of like Girlhood and the 400 Blows and the Florida Project, and a huge hearted coming of age story that I think serves as an inadvertent throwback to the easy going buzz of hanging out with friends in the
Hmm.
city you call home, as something that we haven't done for a long time, and apparently in Singapore we won't be able to do for a few months longer. Sorry guys, like just news broke today as we're recording that we're back to circuit breaker phase, meaning that we, no more dining out, no more social activities.
Yeah.
It's kind of a bummer, lah.
uh,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Oh
Anyway,
well, if you want to hang out, go watch Rocks and hang out with these awesome girls.
yeah, for sure.
Eh,
I would really, really like to keep an eye on Bakri's career from here on out, right? This was like her debut,
mhm,
and like I'm very taken by her performance, like so good, especially I think in the moments in time where she's confronted and feels the need to explain herself, but
mhm.
cannot find the words from it. Some of the like just facial expressions, and the quiet moments of that, where you can see like she retreats into herself to kind of like contemplate what she's actually doing,
Mhm.
is phenomenal. That those things are truly phenomenal, and I'm really excited. I mean, she's so young, to see where she goes with this.
Mhm. Exactly. One of my favorite films of 2021. Would you rank it up there? With like The Father or Quo Vadis Ada, or stuff like that. Is it in your top 10?
Yeah, easily for this year.
Yeah.
I feel like it definitely has the quality to it. I mean, all of the films that we've discussed, in the last episode, right? Of Behold, and the ones that we're discussing here, like it definitely ranks up there.
Mhm.
Even though it's a very different breed of film, right?
Yeah.
Perhaps closer to Minari, but with a very kind of different lens to it, that
Cor-
has a bit more realism and
mm.
naturalism here than we got with Minari.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Next up, let's talk about. I'm not gonna call this an enjoyable film because it's much in the vein of it's much in the vein of Uncut Gems, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
In terms of, it's just like a pure stress ball of a film. This film I'm talking about is Shiva Baby. It is the feature directorial debut of writer director Emma Seligman,
Mm.
who crafts an absurdly funny, highly anxious comedy about a snarky bisexual girl named Danielle who runs into her sugar daddy at a Jewish funeral, a shiva, attended by her family and ex-girlfriend. Shiva Baby is such a witty and pithy affair, making good use of its claustrophobic single setting for highly uncomfortable humor and well choreographed suspense
Mm.
and so well choreographed suspense that it often plays like horror movie, right down to its plucky like string soundtrack, right? It's very
Yep.
horror-y,
Yep.
and Seligman, she tightly orchestrates all this in a sarcastic and lively film with loving cultural Jewish specificity and also like nuance, and she really works the satirical muscles to elevate every escalating complication in Daniel's life at this moment. What are your thoughts on this weird little dramedy Shiva Baby?
Oh god, when you say anxiety inducing, it's totally true. There are these moments in time where, with the tight camera angles and just kind of like this incessant chatter of like the people around you together with like the strings, is
Mm-hmm.
it's absolutely claustrophobic, right?
Yeah.
I felt like I found myself like, holding my breath and having like more kind of like measured breathing throughout that time. It really is very evocative. Like I don't know um how you tune it that finely, right, to kind of capture the kind of strange tension of social awkward
Mm-hmm.
interaction that is necessary due to societal expectations, in this case
Yeah.
a very specific community. It
Yes.
is
Yeah.
extremely, it's not extremely difficult to watch. Like we've talked about films that's extremely difficult to watch, but it's
Mm.
a trip for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think as you follow kind of Danielle through her story and then kind of like ups and downs of that as she tries to navigate all this mess, right? That kind of like uh coagulates in
Yeah.
this couple of moments in the house, because it's pretty much all in real time.
Yeah. And somewhat self-inflicted mess as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And like life is messy like that for sure,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
don't think it's often that it kind of congregates all together in one house.
Mm.
And like as it does that, it congregates in her head as well. And that is just like oh goodness, I really like
Yeah. Yeah.
I I
Like.
I have had some experiences where it feels like that, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
nothing to this extent. And I don't think I've seen a film that has captured that as succinctly and as eloquently as Shiva
Yep.
Baby has. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, 100%. A lot of you may not know lah, but my close friends know that my greatest fear in life is not like ghosts or demons or even a car accident. My greatest fear in life, literally, is family gatherings.
Yeah.
Like this plays into my deepest fear, like family gatherings. Like if you don't know, like I mean, I probably shouldn't say what I do during Hari Raya, lah, but like my friends know like how averse I am to family gatherings. So
Yep.
like you don't necessarily need to be Jewish to understand the stress of the situation.
No, not at all. Yeah.
Or you just need to have a family to
Yep.
appreciate the high anxiety and mortifying comedy of the fuck ups here. Like there are all you. I'm sure all of you have been questioned by family members about your life and things that you don't want to say. Um, your question about your weight, your question about your habits, your question about your ambition and your career. And you just don't want to get into it.
Yeah.
Add to the fact, I've never had a sugar daddy, which makes it a lot more complicated. So Danielle here is on a sugar baby app, so she has transactional relationships for money, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, also her parents don't know that she is bisexual or a lesbian.
Yep.
And her ex-girlfriend, played by Molly Gordon, who seems to kind of steal the show every time she's in an indie film. You may recognize her from Booksmart and things
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Mm-hmm.
She's there as well, so she has to hide that relationship from her parents. Then she has to hide her sugar daddy from both her parents and the girlfriend. And then you have the weird awkward relationship between the girlfriend and her as well. They're kind of frenemies now. It all comes together. And then the sugar daddy's wife, the blue eyed blonde haired shiksa,
Yeah.
comes in, and she looks amazing. And then that plays into her insecurity as well, and this all comes together in this uh absolute car crash of a funeral, where the least dramatic thing is that she doesn't even know who died.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she tries to clarify a number of times and never gets a clear answer.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh goodness.
Fantastic. Like I love. Did you love like the very obvious horror tropes thrown into this comedy? Like it feels very like the director was going straight for a horror film.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
First most obvious one I think is the soundtrack, right? And
Yeah.
you don't get any of that until she steps into the house, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it feels exactly like that, right? We've just kind of like this very sparse sort of like off key strings there, we kind of like gets under your skin
Mm-hmm.
in a very kind of like subtle way as conversation is going on, and it just kind of adds to the general like tension and awkwardness that builds across the entire movie itself. It's just
Oh
like it's so
yes.
very obvious. But even then, like, some of the camera work as well is very um reminiscent of like very classic horror storytelling.
Yeah, yeah. I also think like it's paced to perfection.
Mm.
It's grounded by a magnetic lead performance, and it's painfully awkward, but at the same time impossible to look away. And I find it rare for a film to simultaneously balance such wildly divergent tones, horror, comedy, drama, awkwardness, and to interweave big laughs with gut wrenching discomfort. I particularly enjoyed the choreography of the small room, where like all the little turns that she has to make. It's like
Yeah.
navigating a minefield. Such a tight script and such great performances kind of anchor this. And again, it's universally relatable. You've all have family members who just want to dig into your lives and question you,
Oh
and
god.
sort of like it's insulting without meaning to be insulting.
Or
And
sometimes insulting to be insulting, depending.
correct, yeah, and we've all had that like, and it's so really relatable. Like, you don't really need to be Jewish to understand the what's going on here. It's thrilling. It's thrilling. I really love it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. A fair warning for those of you that do struggle, with anxiety and things like that.
Yeah.
This might trigger some of your social anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
just from like watching it alone. I know it had an effect on me for certain scenes, in particular.
Yeah.
Um,
Full cringe. Full
yeah,
cringe.
I'm just like, oh my god, I can feel it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, still an extremely good film. But fair warning, if you do tend towards that, yeah, just be aware. But
Yeah.
definitely Shiva Baby is a great film to watch just for like tonally just nailing it, like
Mm-hmm.
absolutely like just spot on, capturing the emotional kind of turmoil
Yeah.
of all of your bad life choices coming together at once.
Yeah, and the great thing about it is, right, like, it's, I mean, not just the performances and score and music, the deadpan humor, and everything. The great thing about this is like it's only kind of 70-ish minutes, so it's not much to get through. You can get through it.
Yep, yep.
It's not like a 2 hour feature. You just have to get through it for 70 minutes, but 70 minutes can feel like a lifetime. It's that kind of despair that lingers.
Mm.
One of my favorite scenes in the film actually comes towards the end, where the dad is trying to get everyone into the car. You know what
Oh
I'm
my
talking
god,
about?
yeah.
It's so stressful. But like, haven't you been there?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and the dad is so oblivious to like the mood in the car.
It's oh my god. There's just it's like so many. And the thing is like no one actually gives any sort of like emotional attention to the person who's actually grieving.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Like
That's
they
right. Yeah.
completely just like pass her off. People
Mm.
are puking in her house, clogging up the toilets, and she's just trying to keep everything together. And
Yeah.
to be fair, Danielle and Maya do try to help out, right, as best they
Mm-hmm.
can. But
Mm-hmm.
like while they're struggling with their own thing, this woman is like just harried and like completely at her wits' end, and no one, not a single person at this Shiva gives a damn. Very honestly.
Yeah, yeah, they're all caught up in their own drama, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of insane, right? Because like she occasionally just comes into the frame. In passing, she walks past, and there's like a one-liner of her complaining about or making some, sarcastic comment about how shit her life is at the moment. And I'm just like, oh my god, this poor lady.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just kind of buried right in the background amidst everything that's going on with Daniels and her kind of drama.
Yes, yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, very stressful film. It's a bit like Uncut Gems in a way. So
Yeah,
fair warning. Yeah, there is a trigger warning here. But I think like you do yourself a favor and watch it, lah, because it's one of those. I don't know that I'm gonna rewatch it. It's a bit like Uncut Gems again, like a Safdie
I
brothers.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah. I would rewatch it if I was showing a friend it.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
it's one of those films that you kind of recommend, and then you tell them, okay, fair warning, but if you want to watch it, I don't mind watching it with you. But it's more for the experience of like watching them watch it. One of those
Mm-hmm,
movies. I think I would
mm.
probably do that, but probably not on my own, just because like, no, no, I don't want to have to relive that, and all the associated feelings of my personal experiences in that realm as well
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
But solid stuff. Yeah, for a debut film, yeah, it's Emma Zagram's first film,
So
right?
correct. Yeah, a couple of debuts kicking off like our highlights here. So great new filmmakers to look out for are these two.
Yeah.
And next up, we have a non-fiction film. This is a documentary by Alexander Nanau from Romania, and this is such a riveting portrait of political corruption. One of the best journalism documentaries you will ever see. It follows the aftermath of a 2015 nightclub fire in Bucharest that killed 64 people.
Yeah.
And then it ties into the mysterious death of a pharmaceutical CEO, the resignation of a health minister, all seemingly unrelated events. And an intrepid team of reporters from a sports magazine
Mm,
um, digs in to expose a massive scandal and cover up in Romania. Collective plays almost like a propulsive, real time investigative thriller, exploring the fallout of a national tragedy and the courage of those reporters who are tirelessly working to uncover the truth. Um, as I've kind of hinted at, there are layers upon layers upon layers to this conspiracy, and the way that the heroic team of journalists, uncover shocking widespread corruption through good old fashioned boots on the ground and stuff like that. It's kind of inspiring, but at the same time horrifying in what they find out.
yeah.
You know, um, a great real time detective story and journalism story, and I bet one of these days we're gonna get some sort of Hollywood adaptation of this because it's just too wild to be. It's one of those like fact is stranger than fiction kind of
Oh,
stories.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I really wouldn't be surprised if someone's writing a script somewhere for an adaptation. It's just that it is so complete in the drama and the issues that it presents, that I
Hmm.
mean, Hollywood's gonna jump on that sometime soon. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. What are your overall thoughts on the documentary and its approach to covering these journalists?
Uh, it did feel like it started a bit slow, right? You don't it slowly kind of leads you into, the context and exactly what is going on before it kind of gets to, well, not really the meat of it, right? Like it feels like
Mm,
as an audience you are doing the same kind of work that the journalists are, right? Like there is a big question mark. Things don't
mm,
add up, and much like they are doing, as you see in the film, trying to uncover these things, you are along for the ride.
mm-hmm,
Once it picks up, though, oh, good God, this is harrowing. The kind of revelations that come out, the kind of like behavior that is exposed, it is so dark. My God,
yes,
and
yes,
it's riveting, in all the ways that a train crash is riveting,
mm-hmm,
right? And it's hard to look away, right? Like there isn't much in terms of like, I mean, obviously the style of it is clearly documentary, and it is very very clear cut. Like it's very straightforward, right? There are these journalists, this is what they're trying to do, and these are the people they speak to and interview and capture while they're doing that.
mm-hmm,
And outside of that, it's just like the entire story is just bonkers.
yeah,
That it's hard to believe that it's nonfiction, right? Like
yes,
it
yeah,
feels like it was birthed in, like a Grisham novel, maybe, right? Like of that kind of ilk, in terms of like the
yes,
conspiracy behind that.
yeah,
uh but yeah, there's a lot of moments of just like hopelessness and helplessness
mm-hmm,
and disbelief. I found myself feeling as I'm
mm,
watching through this, at the scale of the problem,
mm-hmm,
as well as the lack of solution to that problem.
and the lack of will to even solve it.
Yeah,
At least among the bureaucrats, with that good exception of like the new health minister that was
yeah.
appointed
I'm just
midway
gonna
through the
call
film.
him Vlad because I can't pronounce his surname. Yeah.
Hi,
Uh,
my name is Vlad. In his
I am
very
Minister.
endearing,
Yeah, I'm
Minister Vlad. Yeah,
Mr. Vlad. I'm the health minister.
yeah.
Yeah.
He's quite endearing though. I really like him.
I mean, like he's genuine to a fault, right?
Yep, yep.
I think especially towards the third act
Hmm.
of the film, when he starts getting slandered and kind of like drawn into like his good intentions and everything that he's the good that he's trying to do gets dragged into like the
A mudslinging
mudslinging.
contest.
Oh
Yeah,
my god. And like
yeah.
just the way he kind of laughs, not laughs
Hmm.
it off, but laughs at the kind of like,
Absurdity of the situation.
yeah, I really really felt for him. Like if there's anyone, like the journalists are definitely kind of the stars here, right? Like they're
Hmm.
putting everything on the line, to be very honest. And you kind of
Hmm.
find out at the end, like, it's not just their careers and all of that. Now that they're coming under a lot of scrutiny, but even their families have been threatened as well in one particular scene.
Yeah.
They're definitely the heroes of the story. But Minister Vlad, damn,
Hmm.
like, the one kind of shining beacon in this, like, like past hole of like corruption and
Yeah.
everything. And
It.
what makes it worse is that it has to do with the public health system,
Hmm.
right? Like you expect. I mean, like, for us in Singapore, I think we do take it for granted. We do have a very good health system here.
Hmm.
Um, and like just the idea that you can't trust the hospitals to keep you free from like simple bacterial infection is insane.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
absolutely insane. And the lengths at which people have gone to make a buck off of
Hmm.
everything is kind of sickening. No pun intended.
Yes. Yeah, it's the thing is, like, Collective starts out with the inciting incident, obviously the nightclub fire in Bucharest,
Yeah.
which is horrific enough just taken by itself, this ill-fated heavy metal performance that quickly unfolds into mayhem due to um malfunctioning pyrotechnics, that causes a fire.
Yeah.
Bunch of people died, and you think for a while like that's the story, like that's a big national tragedy until it unfolds, and then and unlikely hero emerges in the form of a Sports Gazette reporter, Kathleen Tolontan,
Mm-hmm.
who works for a publication that's, as its title implies, is more invested in athletic issues than medicinal malpractice. But he and his colleagues, weirdly, are not okay. Not weirdly, lah, because this makes sense. They're not state run,
Yeah.
which is what allows them to dig deep into this without oversight from government PR and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So they are the ones who uncover this huge conspiracy. First, it starts out big enough. You find out that a pharmaceutical company is diluting antibacterial disinfectants.
Yep.
The stuff that doctors use for surgeries and stuff like that, diluted to the point that it's like one tenth of its initial potency, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So then there are the tense phone calls and revealing sources and tracking people in cars and photographing people, and then the whole conspiracy gets larger and then larger and then larger to the point where you just can't believe the the health system in Romania is in a hole this deep. Not just a hole this deep, but created by bureaucrats who care more about populist
Mm-hmm.
politics than the safety of its citizens.
Yeah.
It really captures the sort of dystopian democratic ideals that have been pervasive ever since Trump got elected, right? Like
Yeah.
we all over the world, people have started to feel very let down by the process of democracy, and just democracy failing at itself, and nowhere is there more evidence that in Collective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does focus on the healthcare system in Romania, but mostly it focuses on the politics that created the gaping holes in the healthcare system, that Collective is uncovering. It's insane, from bribery to fake documentation
Mm-hmm.
to the bacteria scandal, and everything. Like, it's such an engrossing narrative that you forget that it takes place several years into the past,
Yeah.
and also kind of makes you wonder how Romania is handling the COVID-19 crisis right now.
Mm-hmm.
As well as the as a journalism documentary is really really good. It inspires you to hail and celebrate people who are willing to put their lives and careers on the line to uncover the truth.
Yeah.
As well as some well-meaning bureaucrats who are one little cog raging against the machine and just unable to do anything despite all his best intentions. It's very disquieting, and very procedure driven, I might add. It
Mm.
almost feels almost like a David Fincher type Zodiac or something, where you're following these guys on the ground, gumshoeing and everything. All very good. I think the editing also, and the way that the editing helps you connect the dots
Yeah.
into the vast machinery of a world at odds with himself. A complicated healthcare system in Romania. Very striking. And it navigates the wreckage of all of this with a throbbing sense of purpose. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. It is. It is. Oh man. It is honest to a fault for sure,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like in there, but this takes collective takes a lot um of your attention, just to kind of like, it takes a lot of energy to watch this. It really does.
Mm,
I think it also has to do with the fact that we are not obviously not native Romanian speakers, and having to deal with the subtitles, and sometimes the confusing kind of like overlaps of conversation and things like that, as the subtitles trying to kind of struggle to keep up.
yep.
um with that kind of adds to the how harrowing it is,
Mm-hmm.
because of just like not being able to understand. But even if you don't understand the words,
Mm-hmm.
the emotions come through kind of like very clearly, right? Like more often than not, you are faced on screen with someone who is asking
Mm,
questions that they just want answers to, because somebody died, or it's because of their pain and suffering. Like they
mm,
want to know why it is that they have gone through what they've gone through and suffered what they've suffered, to
mm,
people who don't have answers, right? And
yep.
that ranges from the everyone, right, within this film itself. And every time someone can't give an answer, no matter how well meaning they are or how effusive they are being because they are guilty of it, it's
Mm-hmm.
just it is heartbreaking, to
Mm,
know that something that should be a basic kind of human right, um is taken for granted and taken advantage of in on such a wide scale.
mm,
um it really, I think it being the public healthcare system
yeah.
really does make you kind of question the humanity of individuals who choose, right, very
Mm,
obstinately to do this.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, from its opening moments to its devastating climax, Collective plays like a gripping real-time thriller. It merges the kind of the reportorial, the journalistic intensity of a film like Spotlight,
Yeah.
with the kind of like paranoid uncertainty of a Grisham novel or a Manchurian Candidate, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
and it explores this national fallout of a tragedy that just won't let up. The fallout keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's so tout, it's so intensely procedural, but it also has a resonant story that allows you to connect with the victims and also question why this is happening,
Yeah.
and the journalistic investigation and this attempt to fix a fatally dysfunctional medical bureaucracy. All the while there are criminal organizations, corrupt politicians, corrupt bureaucrats, corrupt hospital administrators, and rebel rousing television hosts, who do nothing except feed misinformation.
Yeah.
It's all like coming in concert to stymie any real ability to reform a dysfunctional system. So it it's very real. It's very our times right now, like whether you're living in America or anywhere else. I
Hmm.
feel like this kind of hopelessness in democracy, which is why you should watch Collective, a documentary that I feel should have won best documentary at this year's Oscars. It's a bit sad that it didn't win.
Who was it up against?
Okay, I mean, in fairness, the list of documentaries that were up for grabs, like that were competing, were all very good.
Hmm.
But the worst possible documentary won. They picked the worst possible choice, which is My Octopus Teacher on Netflix. Have you
Oh
seen that?
God. I watched like 15 minutes of it. I wasn't
Hmm.
interested. Yeah, I mean, like I think octopus are completely.
Amazing.
amazing creatures, but like,
Yeah.
it really didn't catch me. Really, it
Yeah,
won? What the hell?
my
Oh,
octopus teacher like kind of it sort of made it okay, a documentary about octopus on Net Geo I'll watch,
yeah,
because octopuses are intelligent, amazing creatures, but this was framed in a very masturbatory way, more about one guy's middle age crisis rather than actually about octopus.
yeah,
And it makes such big leaps, like, oh, like this octopus is teaching him how to live life and how to make himself better. I mean, no, this octopus is just being an octopus.
you're
You are
projecting.
you're projecting so much, and then not only that, you're masturbating in an effort to gain some sort of profound insight and maybe get an Academy Award,
Yeah.
which he did, which
Mm-hmm.
is unfortunate. Like there were other things, so much better things, like Dick Johnson is Dead on Netflix was really great.
Yep.
Crip Camp is really great. Boy State on Apple TV. There were so many other great documentaries up for the award, and they literally picked the worst one. And Collective is also like if Collective had lost to Crip Camp or Dick Johnson is Dead or The
Mm-hmm.
Boys, I would have minded so much. But the Octopus Teacher, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, well. Yeah. But anyways, if you guys can,
Mm-hmm.
where can they find Collective? This is gonna be a
Uh,
bit hard to find, isn't it?
uh,
HBO. Guess.
Yes, Collective is available on HBO Go, or if you would like to purchase or rent it, you can find it on places like Amazon and iTunes as well. Like, it's
Yeah.
available on general VOD.
Yeah.
So yeah, all three of the films so far that we've talked about are available on general VOD. Finally, I'm gonna talk about, as I said earlier, the artsiest bromance film of all time, called The Climb. This is a bromance comedy, which is also an incredible two-hander that veers from caustic to sweet through really shockingly sublime filmmaking. Some
Hmm.
of the most intensely creative camera work that I've seen
Yep.
in film comes from this weird bromance movie. The Climb follows best friends Kyle and Mike, who share a close bond until Kyle finds out that Mike has slept with his fiancee. The film explores their tumultuous yet enduring relationship across many years of laughter, heartbreak, and rage, turning their connection into a rich, humane, and uproarious look at the vulnerability behind masculine facades. It is buoyed definitely by testosterone-fueled toilet jokes and oddball chemistry.
Yeah.
But The Climb is a really shrewd take on male friendship, and a really very, I've never seen this before, a very like, art house take on the whole like Judd Apatow bromance kind of vibe.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think about this very like artsy take on bromance comedy?
Oh man. Okay, so I watched through it. On my first watch, I only watched it halfway, and then I got distracted and interrupted, and then I came back to it again. And on the
Mm-hmm.
first watch, I was just pretty like infuriated. To be very
Mm-hmm.
honest, like what? Wow, what a relationship! Like
Yeah.
Kyle and Mike's relationship is toxic to the nth degree.
Mm-hmm.
As is very honestly almost every other relationship in Kyle's life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
anything from like his ex fiance to his new fiance to his parents and his sister, just like everybody in Mike's life is basically just toxic, including Mike himself.
Mm-hmm.
But like Mike and Kyle, um, I mean Mike just takes the cake for
Mm-hmm.
sure. Like I guess most people all have that one asshole friend.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but Mike takes the crown, right? Like if there's an archetypal like asshole friend, like he kind of embodies that, you know.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
I was a
Yeah.
lot more focused on that. The my first kind of like one half that I watched through.
Mm-hmm.
Upon starting it again, just because I don't like to break the momentum of that. You
Mm-hmm.
do start to kind of notice all the little things that are part of the um film experience outside of the story itself. Like you're talking about all like the really smart kind of cuts and the angle work and all of that, like
Mm-hmm.
super solid stuff.
Yeah.
For me personally, those were intriguing in the way that they were used, especially when they
Mm.
were put to good use given the story at that point in time.
Yep.
But there were moments of kind of dissonance with that, I feel.
Mm.
Which is why for me, like the climb doesn't rank as highly as the other three that we've talked about today.
Definitely.
There's a lot of it's fun,
Yeah.
in a completely kind of like silly, maybe not hangover per se,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like nonsensical kind of, but they're just these moments of absurdity that are so close to real life,
Mm.
that are completely believable.
Yeah, yeah,
And maybe even, uh, I mean, like, for me, when like when it reminded me a lot of relationships I had when I was growing up in a boys' school.
Ah, yes, yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's what
I
it
see
felt
that.
like to
Yeah,
me.
yeah, yeah.
Just like the kind of like machismo and bromismo that
Mm-hmm.
just deep, like, adolescent boys have. But this is like two men who like pretty much don't ever grow out of that for a
Mm.
good number of years.
Mm.
Um, but it's told in a way that is at once infuriating but also endearing at the same time. Like, by the time you're halfway through, you're
Mm.
kind of invested, right, in how Kyle is going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you kind of like hoping that Mike will just, fuck off and die somewhere. In the middle, which, or at least those were my personal feelings, lah.
Yeah, yeah.
um but at the same time, like, it's more complicated than that, and I think they did a very good job of exploring that in the much quieter, more
Mm.
serious moments of the film,
Mm.
and how that very deep friendship amidst the nonsense and the
The
toxicity
betrayals.
and the
Yeah,
betrayals and all of that boils down to these really kind of like simple moments and simple conversations of understanding between two men
yeah,
that,
yeah. You realize why they're friends, right? And
yeah,
why they keep being friends despite everything. You
yeah,
know.
that kind of belies the whole point of the film.
Yeah.
I'm curious actually to why it's called The Climb. I didn't do any additional reading about that.
The Climb, much like Shiva Baby, was actually based on a short film, and this was
Ah,
the entirety of the first scene. As they are climbing up the hill, biking up the hill,
yeah,
and as longtime friends Mike and Kyle,
yeah,
discuss the infidelity that just happened.
yeah.
That entire first scene was a short film, which
Ah,
which the director decided to expand into a feature film.
hmm,
So like the starting point for The Climb is it's a clever scenario that is so economical that I think it couldn't have hinted at a grand design to follow. Like, as I
agreed.
mentioned, Mike and Kyle bike up a steep hill as Mike, who is the fitter of the two, speeds ahead while confessing that he's been sleeping with Kyle's fiance. The thing is, right, like the reason that he did that is because like he knows that Kyle would be too out of breath, too tired to really fight back,
Yeah,
which is a diabolical in a sense. And in those like 7 tight minutes, the short film envisioned a pair of dopey, breathless man children whose tight bond is tested under the silliest of circumstances, but at
yeah,
the same time, real circumstance that could possibly happen. So, where could it possibly go from there? As it turns out, it goes to a bunch of different exciting places, and it's a sharp two-hander that, as I said, is both caustic and sweet, with a lot of acrobatic filmmaking to frame it all. The simplicity of the opening bit works to the movie's advantage, I feel, because it
yeah,
careens from unpredictable time jumps into unpredictable time jumps.
yeah,
Thanks to dexterous camera work, testosterone fueled brawls, and all while exploring the fragility beneath their man children masculine surfaces.
yeah,
That disastrous biking trip ends up providing the ideal introduction to the pair's oddball chemistry. Kyle is kind of this affable romantic whose easygoing nature kind of feels like a John C. Riley kind of thing. And he kind of resists the alpha male Mike's shadow.
yeah,
Um, it's very complicated, but then their roles are reversed as time goes on. And then you time jump to a funeral, which I won't spoil whose funeral it is, but then you're like, whoa, okay. That's ended, so we're going on to a
yeah,
new phase into this.
yeah,
The funeral, by the way, has one of my favorite gags of the year. The whole, like, this is a union cemetery gag,
yeah.
where you're not allowed to pick up dirt if you're not unionized, is hilarious and also
Oh
very
God.
American.
Yeah.
It made me laugh very hard. And then it goes to like a house dinner setting over Thanksgiving and Christmas, where it has one of the best camera work shots I've ever seen. Where they track people outside the house through windows. and then like first it's Thanksgiving, and then the camera pans out to a bunch of snowy cars, and then it becomes Christmas. You know, there's this time jump, and then it goes back to the house,
Yeah.
and then it follows a variety of conversation through windows. It's so fucking cool. I've never seen it done before.
Mm-hmm.
It has all these really interesting musical interludes in between as well. You know,
Yep.
it feels like there's a lot of like ambition and artistry and creativity in here, more than the director knows what to do with or is
Yeah.
relevant to the story.
Yep.
You know, I just like really admire the whole, like, you know, this is I'm just going to do whatever I want in this film, you know. And it's a very like artistic approach to a story that I've kind of seen a million times in a Judd Apatow or James Franco kind of vehicle. This is
Yep.
just like a more lo-fi, a more artistic version of it,
Yep.
with great camera work and with more creative editing and artistic choices, lah. You know, it's so great, like a great snippet of domestic unrest that maybe is uh and the sum of his parts is not as good as his individual bright moments.
Yep. I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
I do. I think it's a very bold, artistic choice to cut the stories just before what most people would be the climax for each individual part.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's not the point, right? Like you come to the idea that I've already shown you the parts that you need to see,
Mm-hmm.
uh and fuck you for everything else. Like you don't need to
Mm.
see everything else. You go fill it up yourself.
Yeah.
And that is both, I mean, like, it's clever in moments,
Mm-hmm.
it's infuriating in others.
Mm-hmm.
uh but I mean, it's bold filmmaking in that
Yeah.
kind of sense. It's bold storytelling in that kind of sense, and I can respect that.
Mm.
But sometimes it does feel annoying for sure.
Oh, absolutely. It's very annoying, like, especially in a sense that, you know, you send so much talent in the filmmaking and the
Yeah.
writing
Yeah.
that this could have been more. So yeah, I mean, right at the end of the podcast, I would name like a bunch of other films that I feel like deserve the spot more than The Climb, but for some reason I don't love as much as The Climb. I
Hmm.
think I was just very like taken in by the almost restless film school showmanship of the two filmmakers, you know, who
Yeah.
are also the two stars of the film, and the just genuine inventiveness that each sequence presented, lah. It was such an unpredictable ride to present a very predictable formula, you know.
Yeah.
Like, even when the drama careens into overwrought or cliche territory, I think The Climb does a lot to mine artistic poetry from the buddy movie genre, and
Yep.
probably one of the most refreshing takes on that genre that I've seen in a while. Yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, those are my final thoughts. Anything to say about The Climb or any of the other films before we kind of name our honorable mentions?
uh no, no, not really. I mean, like, keep a lookout for the Hollywood adaptation of The Collective.
Yeah, yeah.
Probably starring Jake Gyllenhaal, maybe Ben Affleck.
Mm,
Yeah, it feels like in that kind of realm, I'm guessing. I
mm.
really,
Jake
really,
Gyllenhaal was Zodiac, right?
yeah, yep, Zodiac.
Yeah, 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 yep, yep, yep. Yeah,
Yeah,
David Fincher, Jake Gyllenhaal. You know,
yeah,
let's get Mark Ruffalo back, he's also in Zodiac and also in Spotlight, so he
that
does
is
these type of
true.
things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, he can be Minister Vlad, for example.
correct. You know, and they could do it like in a very Chernobyl type of way, where they just speak English, but you just assume the screen is universal translator. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Or I mean, hopefully they don't do like bad Romanian accents. That would. Yeah. Anyways, let's move on with our
Yeah,
honorable
let's move
mention.
on. You know, there are a couple of films that I really should have picked above The Climb. You know, I was tempted to change it for a while, but yeah, there was a lot of great hidden cinematic gems in 2021. You know,
Yep.
before I sort of take over, like, are there any that you've seen that you would like to spotlight?
I not in particular. I think like a lot of the films that that I've watched on this side of things were things that you've recommended to me,
Mm-hmm.
more or less. So I don't think I've watched enough of a breadth of films this year in particular, particularly of like the more obscure indie stuff,
Right,
to
right,
be
right.
able to comment on that.
Okay, cool. One of them that I've already sort of commented on is a film called La Llorona, coming out of
Mm.
Guatemala.
Yep.
A great horror film that marries a classic haunted house story with the horrors of genocide, a very real genocide that happened to the Mayan people over in Guatemala. So definitely should check out La Llorona. Not The Curse of La Llorona, which is the Blumhouse horror film,
Yeah.
which is they're very different stories, very different
Oh yeah.
stories. Yeah. One thing I saw recently is a documentary film called Summer of Soul,
Mm.
or When the Revolution Could Not Be Televised. It's directed and written
Ah.
by Questlove.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it takes place in 1969 during the same summer as Woodstock, where a different music festival took place just 100 miles away over in the Bronx in New York.
Hmm.
More than 300,000 people attended the summer concert series known as the Harlem Cultural Festival.
Hmm.
It was filmed, but after that summer, somehow the footage got lost. Up until now, Questler found the footage and decided to make a documentary out of it that doesn't just tell the story of the concert, but how the concert plays into the cultural significance of that particular era in the late 60s, especially
Yeah.
just a few years after Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, JFK, and Bobby Kennedy were just assassinated, and the height of the civil rights movement, lah.
Hmm.
So this just isn't about black music, but it's also about black culture and how like underseen black culture is, particularly because this monumental events of the same scale as Woodstock doesn't receive the kind of reverence or historical underpinning that Woodstock gets. So yeah, it's very great, and you can watch a ton of like legendary soul R&B
Hmm.
singers, just like Aretha Franklin and all of that, just singing at the height of the prime. Incredible. Yeah, Summer of Soul is probably my favorite non-fiction I've seen, just because it's so exuberant and so fun.
Yeah.
Really, really great. Another one I would like to highlight is Gunda, which I recently saw at the projector.
Hmm.
Not for everyone. It's a non-dialogue, no dialogue at all, no narration, no voiceover. You just follow in black and white the lives of a bunch of farm animals, particularly pigs,
Oh.
chickens, and cows. And there's no like David Attenborough like trying to anthropomorphize them.
Yeah.
You just have to settle into the rhythm of their life. You're watching them nurse, you're watching them eat, you're watching them fly, you're watching them lay eggs, that kind of thing. And at first you're like, I'm kind of bored, and then you're just mesmerized by the simplicity and rhythms of their life, to the point where you kind of just put yourself in their shoes, and you start to chill with them. It's like rocks, but for farm animals. Uh, and it's great. I really, really loved it. Like I did not think I would like it, but I ended up really, really liking it. Stray is kind of similar. Stray is the
Ah.
film. It's the film out of Turkey that follows stray dogs
Hmm.
in Istanbul. It's very similar to Caddy, which follows stray cats in Istanbul.
Yeah.
So if you like Caddy and you like dogs, you should watch Stray. Finally, I do want to mention. I've already talked about Saint Maud, right? We
Yeah.
had a whole dual feature on that, so let's
Hmm.
pick another one. I want to mention The Reason I Jump, which is based on a best-selling book by Naoki Higashida. The
Hmm.
Reason I Jump is this immersive cinematic exploration of neurodiversity through the experiences of non-speaking autistic people from all around the world. So you get to kind of delve into the lives and experiences of non-speaking autistic people, who are the worst affected in the spectrum.
Yep.
And it allows you to gain a measure of empathy and care for them that you didn't know that you had, particularly because you don't quite understand the situation, you don't quite understand the diagnosis and what they need and how they communicate. And the reason I jump, I think, is a really good window into their lives, yeah. And the one that I wanted to replace The Climb with, but I chose The Climb for some reason, is a film called The Killing of Two Lovers, which is straight up in my top five of the year. It's basically it follows this guy called David, who's desperately trying to keep his family of six together during a separation from his wife Nikki.
Hmm.
They both agree to see other people, but David struggles with his wife's new relationship. It's a very quiet, unsettling domestic drama
Hmm.
that always verges. Every scene has this tension that it could lead to violence, but it doesn't. And it's just a very great. It's one of those domestic dramas that you don't expect to be great because of the simplicity of its premise.
Yeah.
It's this year's The Nest.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I recently also watched The French Dispatch at Cannes. Very good film, but it's very like late Wes Anderson, where it's more style than substance. So I don't know like where that would sit.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah. We will
yeah.
see. We will see. I am itching for Dune to come because I feel, in particular, having recently kind of like seen a couple of Shyamalan films,
Mm-hmm.
it's oh man, I really hope that his turn as Paul will kind of like break him out of the mold that he's currently in.
Yes, I mean, I'm sure he'll do a good job, as will, Zendaya and Oscar Isaac and Rebecca Ferguson. It's such a stacked, amazing
Yeah,
cast.
yeah.
This coming October, in the first couple of weeks of October, we'll be doing a deep dive into the Dune series, all six books, Brian Herbert's continuation of the franchise, the sci-fi miniseries, the David Lynch movie, the weird documentary about
Mhm.
Jodorowsky's vision for Dune, which isn't really Dune,
Yeah.
but kind of intriguing at the same way. So we'll talk all about Dune this coming October before the film releases, and of course, once the film is out, we'll talk about Dune the movie by Denis Villeneuve on Genre Equality.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, so that's what we have planned. This coming week will be it's our latest episode of Genre Equality. Headlined by two massive Marvel blockbusters.
Hmm.
Loki, the series recently ended, so we'll be delving into that. A film that I have not a film, a series that I have mixed feelings about.
Yeah,
Kind of didn't like the first half, really liked the second half. And Black Widow as well. Another film I have mixed feelings about.
same, same. Hmm.
Like not a particularly bad film. Not even a bad film lah. Like
Yeah,
objectively, it's not like it's just not great lah. It's not the level that I've come to uh expect from Marvel.
yeah.
Simultaneously, we'll be talking about Masters of the Universe Revelation.
Hmm.
One of the worst movies of 2021, Space Jam: A New Legacy. We'll be getting into that. We'll talk about Resident Evil Infinite
Oh
Darkness,
god.
America, the motion picture, The Tomorrow War, another kind of very, very flawed blockbuster, Snake Eyes, Blood Red Sky, Monsters at Work, which is a new show based on Monsters Inc. on Disney Plus,
Hmm.
Kingdom, Ashen of the North, Troll Hunters, Rise of the Titans, and I recently read Project Hail Mary, Andy Weir's new book, so I'll be
Nice.
reviewing that as well. So lots of big topics coming up. What are you most excited to talk about on Genre Equality?
I think I mean I'm gonna be covering Troll Hunters.
Mm,
From what we can gather, this might be the end of the franchise for now.
yeah.
There's nothing else that's been announced past that. So
Correct.
if you guys have followed us for a while at Genre Equality in particular, we've basically reviewed pretty well almost everything from Troll Hunters, right? From Tales of
Mhm.
Arcadia and well Troll Hunters itself, Tales of Arcadia, and what's the other wizard one called?
It's just is wizards.
Oh yeah,
And
Wizard.
then and three below.
Entry below, yes. So
Yeah.
we've reviewed all of that. We've loved most of it,
Hmm.
with very few exceptions actually. So very excited to see how that all comes together.
Yeah.
I do believe that it has all kind of like three kind of storylines boiling down into one. So yeah, we'll see. Hopefully it's good.
Mm.
And then Masters of the Universe, just because like I don't know why in particular I watched Masters of the Universe as a kid.
Yeah.
Like thinking back, I'm not sure what the appeal of it was. Was it because it was a cartoon and it was on during cartoon time, therefore I
Mm-hmm.
watched it? But it does hold a interesting kind of like nostalgic spot in my memory for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where they go with this. Just because like Shira completely blew me away with its reinvention.
Mm.
And I'm not sure if Masters of the Universe this time round is going for that necessarily.
No,
Um,
Kevin Smith, who is show running it, lah, and he actually hasn't done any animation before, so this will be interesting to see how Kevin Smith does that.
yeah,
Kevin Smith has gone on records multiple times on his podcast Fatman Beyond by saying that like while he appreciates She-Ra's reinvention,
yeah,
Masters of the Universe is straight up fan service.
yeah,
Like if you love the cartoon, we're just doing the cartoon again, but like with better graphics and more mature storytelling. He just wants to like it's just pure fan service, and I'm eager to see what he does with it lah.
yeah,
It's yeah.
yeah. I mean, like, I'm okay with that. So we'll
Mhm.
just see where it goes. I mean, it has a lot to live up to.
Yeah.
But from what I've seen so far, in terms of like the stills and the trailer and stuff like that, looks pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, same. So join us on the 1st of August,
Yeah,
which is when we'll be releasing next episode of Genre Equality. Till then, this has been Hit Zero.
I'm Isa.
Goodbye, guys. Remember to like, share, subscribe on YouTube.
Ciao.
See ya.